in November and December of last year, obviously, by the way, we were not running hot dog dogs. It was a client, a gaming client. We put the hot dog here to hide who the client was. So we ran 60 videos over November and December, and we got into January. We're like, hey, how do we do? And we didn't get a single winner out of all 60 original ideas, not variations, but brand new, bespoke, hard to do, fully animated ideas. And statistically, it's just impossible. We should have had two to four winners. So we got concerned and decided to evaluate or do an AA test. What were we doing in our growth hacking methodology? And was it valid? And should we be changing it? Was the underlying assumption. So the little dog in blue is the control. It's the winner. The four dogs to the left are exact duplicates of that dog, with one exception. Each dog has a black pixel somewhere added into the frame. And the purpose for adding that one black pixel was to force a new hash ID in Facebook. And the idea there is, if we normalized distribution and created brand new videos, the children and the winning video should have very similar performance. And if they did, we knew that we were doing okay in terms of our testing. To the right is the initial IPM, so impressions per install. And we use IPM because that normalizes CPM, or cost per thousand advertising. It removes it as a variable. So we would have expected somewhere between 5 to 15%, 5 to 10% rather, deviation from the control because of distribution and audience, et cetera, but it didn't happen. So the dog on the far left, again, exact clone with one black pixel, came in at an IPM of 8.3 versus the control's 5.57, which is almost 150% better performance. So that didn't seem right. So we thought, well, maybe we didn't spend enough money. We initially ran it for $200 each ad. We turned it back on for $1,000 for each ad. None of the relative separation increased or decreased. It kind of locked in. So that was our first concern that made us realize either we were doing something wrong or there was something wrong in the way that the tests were being run. So we ran a series of other tests, about 20, and came to this conclusion, which is, we call it the aha moment. Same dog, same exact control, winning video. We like to call that the gladiator. That's the dog in blue. If you look to the far right, you'll see its initial IPM value is 8, so it's at the very top of the line graph. All the other videos, the 5 to the right, were gameplay videos. They all looked nothing like the original video. They were unique. And you'll notice the IPM initial starting values for those are very low. And so we figured out that the control maintains its creative history, meaning if you spend $1 million on that video, it has an awful lot of learnings. It certainly has exited the learning phase. It's in the optimized phase, and it gives it an advantage in the way that we were doing this IPM testing. Said backwards, it's very difficult, if you include the control video in your A/B testing, to outperform it, because it's bringing with it all of that history. So here's the conclusions that we came to in January, and that is, when using this split testing method, if we included the control in our testing, it gave an advantage to that control when we were doing IPMs. So that's one. Don't include the control video when you're doing A/B testing is the conclusion. 2, it appears, and I'm using air quotes around appears, that Facebook is able to use some form of machine learning or AI to group visually similar concepts. So in the example we were using of a dog, if it's many dogs, it can inherit, which is the middle, to the right, the middle column there, inherit the initial starting value, IPM starting value of the original winning video. When you take visually very different ads, which is the far right, the IPMs are radically different. So what does that mean? It means that those ads that have no visual identity or similarity to the control require more time and more spend for Facebook to understand what they are. The good news and the conclusion for us was, with a modification, meaning remove the control video from the test, our IPM testing methodology worked. However, we also realized that it wasn't enough, and we needed to change the way that we were doing testing if we hoped to give these brand new videos a better test. So here's a super summary of what we did. And the one thing I want to call out is, as of this month, we have started offering free creative testing to any creative studio or managed client for us. So if you're interested, let us know. Here's the way that our testing works. It's 3 steps. We initially start with an IPM test, meaning, will it click well? 2, will it generate some revenue? 3, will it scale with ROAS, return on ad spend? So we're going to walk through what these 3 stages are, and give you the parameters. The objective is, at the end of this, you'll be able to kind of take these stages or download the white paper from our site and share them with your team. They are highly tactical, highly implementable, highly replicable, so that you'll see the results from your team. We encourage, if you find different results, please feed it back to us. Again, we're not saying that we have all the answers. We're dealing with many major companies and getting feedback from them and changing the results, which is what we're talking about today. So we'd appreciate feedback also. So here's phase 1. Start with a brand new campaign that is only used for testing. And the reason is, you don't want any influence from any other form of media buying. Just start with something new. In the ideal world, you would actually start with a brand new account, and the account would be isolated only for doing creative testing. If that's not possible, just start with a new campaign. Do not include the control video. Run 1 ad per ad set. And the reason being here is, you want to force even distribution of spend across all ads. If you happen to use the A/B testing solution at Facebook, 1 ad may consume a majority of the budget, and it may happen quickly. So we like to start with a forced distribution of spend. Normally, we're testing somewhere between 3 to 5 creatives, and we're only using mobile app install bidding. Doesn't matter whether you're an in-app ads game or an in-app purchase game, or etc. You want to start with app install bidding only. If you are required to run in the US, we believe that spending somewhere between $200 to $400 per ad, again, you see the assumptions on CPI, $2 to $4, is required so that you're getting about 100 installs. If you can run a proxy for the US, and we have found highly correlated statistical relevance in running in India, which is substantially less expensive, both in terms of CPI and CPM. So you can drop that cost per test from 200 down to 20 bucks. The results are very similar. Now, oddly, we thought that cultural sensitivities, humor, things of that nature, sometimes the color palettes would have shifted. It didn't happen. The winners from the phase 1 in India are a vast majority of the time, plus 95%, the same winners that you'll see in India, in the US, sorry. So you only run iOS or Android. You don't run both because the performance of both are very different. In terms of targeting, you run either the Facebook newsfeed using a 10 to 15% lookalike audience. The reason is you want something fairly broad. So if you can run your past 90-day installers or your past 90-day payers, that's a great step. If you are able to run outside of the US, you want to run broad English speakers only, which is what we discussed in India. If you don't want to run in a newsfeed and you want to run in Facebook Audience Network, that's okay too, but don't mix Audience Network in Instagram or Messenger or newsfeed. You got to run in just one placement, because you'll find the performance per placement radically different. Therefore, the conclusions that you would draw would be radically different and unpredictable. So basically, if the more testing you run, volume of installs, the more likely your confidence will increase. Again, about 100 installs is what you want. For in-app purchase titles, you're going to want to kill the losers relatively quickly, and we'll show you kind of what that means and how you go from step 1 to step 2. For in-app ad titles, you're going to want to allow the top few ads, what we're going to call possible winners, to then exit the learning phase before you put them into the controls campaign. So in our 3-step process, if you are running a hyper casual game and you monetize with ads, you're basically not going to stop at phase 1. If you're running an in-app purchase game or blended purchases and ads, you're going to go to step 2 and step 3. Okay, so how do you go from phase 1 to phase 2, and what do you pick? We've been asked this question a bunch. So we came up with a scenario. There isn't a perfect mathematical model for this. You're going to be using kind of relative guesses. So I know it's a bit small, but if you look at the 2 left ads that we have surrounded in blue, the IPMs for those are 6.7 and 6.34, where the next one is 4.8, 3.18, et cetera, and it continues to drop. You will frequently find this type of scenario where you will get 2 or 3 ads that will break out and be strong IPM winners, and the rest will have a very large separation. So the goal is, kill the obvious losers and test the remaining ads in part 2. If they're all very similar, just increase the budget and let them burn for a little bit longer. One other note that we have had conversations with some of the hyper casual companies is if you're predominantly running in-app ads, you're going to need to let them spend more time to accrue the lifetime value to understand if it truly is going to be able to outperform your control video. Best if you can keep those isolated from your champion video. Okay, went from phase 1, IPM, phase 2, initial ROAS. The goal here is, will it make money? So create a brand new campaign. Your bidding methodology changes from mobile app installs to either AEO or VO. You still keep the control, the winning video out. You do not mix it. You need to have the challenger or challengers exit the learning phase before they're allowed to fight together. This time, you go back to a more traditional best practice where you can run one ad set with many ads. Facebook will then start to do the optimization and pick the winners, which is okay. We recommend, US only, 10% payers, running auto placement. So now you'll see the blend between Instagram fan, Facebook newsfeed. That's okay. Only run one operating system, iOS or Android, because the monetization rate of operating systems are usually fairly different. If you can run in a different country outside of the US, you will find it to be financially efficient to do so. So for us, a good proxy for how ROAS performs on some titles is running it in South Africa. The cost per purchase in South Africa is substantially lower than the cost per purchase in the United States. So when you look at your geography breakdown, if you find a good proxy for the US, try and run in those territories to see if you can further shave off money to save. So a lifetime budget of what you're going to want is somewhere between $3,500 to $4,900 or $500 to $700 per day for 7 days. Now, here's 2 things that happen if you don't do this. If you allow the phase 1 winner to immediately mix with your best video. 1, the challenger kills the champion. And that's really one of the worst scenarios where without statistical relevance, the challenger outperforms in a short period of time the champion gets shut down. However, as it matures and gets more data, the challenger's performance drops. So you've killed your best performing video, your challenger doesn't monetize well. That's a bad scenario. The opposite is the champion immediately comes in, kills the challenger has not been allowed to exit the learning phase, and therefore it could have become the new champion, but it wasn't ready to mix in battle yet. So it's highly recommended to follow step 2, and then you get to step 3. So step 3 is really, will it scale? Can I exit the learning phase while minimizing my downside risk and my costs? So you use your CBO campaign, still video, use the winners with good or decent ROAS. So you've proven it has good click-through rates. You've proven it can monetize. Now, can it hit your day 7 ROAS targets or whatever your KPI is? Create a copy of an existing ad set, delete the ads with your phase 2 winner, and then allow it to spin in this competitive environment. And then as it works, you start to roll these out. This is one of the important things that we've changed from our prior recommendation. CBO is working quite well. So allowing CBO to oscillate the budget between these groups provides some good ability to maintain performance while also allowing that challenger to exit the learning phase. And then if you're not getting enough spend, you can obviously manually set a minimum budget that you want for CBO. So again, important here to not let the challenger and the existing ad video mix inside of the same ad set until they're both out of the learning phase. So here's what this all did for us. We went from 5% success rate to 17% success rate. That's a 300% increase in performance. Financially, that's great for our clients, but there's also benefits to the creative team. We went backwards a year and we retested the losers that were close and found that we were able to bring back about 30% of those ads. So you can imagine that the creative team is constantly banging their head against trying to come up with new ideas that are going to perform. And if they're constantly losing, it's quite challenging. So this allowed it to come back and give them a whole set of new ideas that were working quite well. So we have a bunch of white papers. If you like the creative tests that we're laying out here, they're all free. Please check them out on our site. I did want to highlight again that we are offering free creative testing to any client. So you can remove the burden from your A/B testing from your internal UA team and give it to us, and we'll hand you back the winner. Please reach out to myself or sales at Consumer Acquisition if you have questions. And I think there are a few things here. So before I go on, let me see if I can actually look at the chat window while displaying. Got it. Okay, so I'm going to keep going a bit more on the promotional side till we run out of time here. And if you guys have questions, let me know. I think we have a unique creative process. It all starts with our team. Mike's our creative director. He spent 20 years as a senior animator at Walt Disney Feature Film. He's hired a team of 2D and 3D storytellers around him. We have a team of 30 editors, all dedicated to us, so we don't work with freelancers. Our internal creative process, we do an audit. We want to know what works for a client, what doesn't, and why. We don't want to repeat their mistakes. We don't want to repeat their wins. We want to do something new. We do a very deep competitor audit. We're now providing tools for free for folks to do this themselves. We do a deep dive on the assets to see what we can tear apart and reuse for editing. If a company has a market segmentation analysis, sometimes called personas or player profiles, we'll ingest that information, and then we'll write internal briefs. To the right is our UI. Click on a video, play it, scrub back and forth, you can see how it works. If, however, you have complex approval processes, like a large entertainment studio or a celebrity or a sports league, we have a more hands-on approach. One thing I think is really important in creative evolution is to understand that it all begins with competitors. And I think Pablo Picasso said it best, that a good artist borrows, but a great artist steals. And then, of course, Steve Jobs ripped him off. If you can figure out a quantitative way of understanding what your competitors are doing, it will give you an endless supply of tested ideas to try. We have found, however, it's not a user acquisition function. It is not a creative function. It's kind of somewhere in the middle, almost sociology. Because of that, we have woven in mobile actions, ad analytics into our platform, and that is the thing that we're giving away for free. Here's an example of what that looks like. So you could take any genre, any subgenre, any title, plug it in and see what those folks have done, either comparing kind of top 4 over a year or deep diving on 1 per month. So it gives you a really interesting visual way of understanding the velocity by network, the velocity by creative concept, and who's ripping off who. So you can see the lock and key method being exchanged between these competitors. The approach I think we take for a performance advertiser is different than a brand advertiser. When we're able to do fake ads, we will be very aggressive creatively with new ideas, fresh ideas, in inventing gameplay. That is not always appropriate when we're working with studios or celebrities, as we had mentioned. And I think this will work. So, you know, we've been working with Matchington Mansion since 2017, where we invented this concept of the picker ad. What you see here is a variety of animation techniques, 2D, 3D, 2.5D, but no gameplay. What's interesting is a majority of the large gaming companies we're working with are now allowing us to do this type of testing. The net result on a financial side is that it produces higher ROAS. It makes them more competitive in the marketplace. And I don't know why, but it produces longer lifetime value. So we're trying to get some data on that. And if you think of it like traditional advertising, where you're trying to entertain and persuade someone, it really does make good conceptual sense. Just to highlight briefly why I believe that player profiles are important, and I think the quote from Mark Twain says it best: to someone with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. The challenge is today, for a majority of companies that we work with, you take one winning ad and you blast it across the ecosystem. But that's not the way that people interact with apps and games. They usually have a motivation for playing. Some like to kill each other, some like to just relax, some like to complete levels. If you're able to speak to them in the way that motivates them to play, meaning change the call to action, change the ad copy, you'll find you'll be able to produce better long-term sustained results. Our pricing is fully transparent. It's on our site. So if you have any questions, let me know. And we've talked about the free mobile action ad intelligence that's available in our platform. We also are exposing mobile app industry benchmarks. So if you're curious how you compare on these fundamentals on a kind of per genre, subgenre basis, CTR, CPM, conversion rate, cost per subscriber, country breakdowns, we make that available. And that's it. I really do appreciate the time. If you have questions, please reach out to me at the email here. And we look forward to further conversation.